All right, gentlemen, that red light just came on. You guys are seeing that we're recording here. This is when a lot of people get nervous. Do you guys want to back out? I mean, as you guys, I'm going to give you a chance, or you guys want to keep going?
Let's go.
They're gonna go, everybody. We're doing it. We're gonna make some magic. Hey, everybody. I want to go ahead and have you guys introduce yourself here. So why don't you guys kick it around the table here, introduce yourself, and tell them what your name is and what you guys are currently working on.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Yeah, this is Josh Cryer. I'm the president and CEO here at Reticulate Micro. Um, about myself, 25 plus years in military communications experience, time at Naval Special Warfare Development Group, NATO, L3 Harris, and then just some of those big orgs up till coming here to Reticulate Micro. And our core focus is video compression, enabling HD video over super small connections, really focused on the defense sector, but it is a dual use technology.
Oh, that's cool.
And then on the call today, today is Amit, our CFO. Amit, you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely, Josh. Jeff, hi, nice meeting you. I'm Amit Shrestha. I'm CFO of Reticulated Micro. 20 plus years in Microsoft in different leadership capacity. My last gig was I was CFO of Latam. Before that, I was in China, Greater China region. I was leading the region. The best part of my Microsoft was when I was leading the US public sector as Chief Financial Officer. And that really leads me to what Josh is doing, something with a purpose. And that really attracted me to join this amazing company, because I'm a strong believer you can only be effective if the organization that you're working for is forward-thinking, supportive, and really wants to be in the leader within the sector. I believe this is the company which is going to be the leader in the sector that we all believe in.
Awesome, awesome. And Derek, how about you? We got Derek on the call. Maybe you can introduce yourself real quick, and then we'll jump into it.
Yeah, Derek Cahill, 25 plus years of marketing experience, go-to-market strategy for startup companies. A lot of experience on the software, SaaS services, and online marketing services as well.
Nice, really cool. Well, Joshua, I want to kick this back to you. So I think this is a conversation that, as I was diving in, doing my research, that could probably be a really, really technical conversation. It feels like it could go that really quickly. I usually do this for these types of conversations. Explain what you guys do so that my mom understands it. My mom's name is Cookie. So make Cookie understand what you guys are working on and how this kind of works in the world here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. Yeah, it's a good point. So yeah, at a very high level, that we'd say in the military that 10,000 or 30,000 foot view, really at the high level, we're able to send HD video over super small connections. And so consider the AOL dial-up era, right? 56K modem, it's got the whole negotiate, beep, bop, that whole kind of a connection. And right. When you want to look at a picture back then, I want to click on that. I want to see that picture. You double click, maybe you download it, and you see like one line of that picture load at a time, very slowly. We're now able to send HD and high quality, sometimes it's less than HD, imagery and video over those types of connections. It has a massive impact for the military because they're tied in many cases to what we would say are legacy connections, older connections that would support those smaller file types. And now we're able to send video over those super small connections. And the reason that's important is because oftentimes, especially in overseas military operations, you might have a UAV, you might have unattended cameras that are connected to those super small connections. And this allows everybody on the battlefield, everybody in the decision-making chain to have access to that video. And it really helps people make better decisions and what we call, we say, reduce fratricide avoidance. That means when there's an ongoing operation, the worst thing that could happen is for innocent people to be impacted by that, right? And so this gives clarity on the battlefield because now everybody can see that video. And so again, at that high level view, HD video, high quality video over super small connections. And what we would say with low latency, that means it's really quick too. It's not just good video, but you don't have to wait 10 or 15 or seconds or a minute to see it. You can see it in almost real time.
Wow. Wow. So I guess with all of your guys' background, which is pretty expansive, how did it get to this portion? Like where did this idea kind of come from? What's the background? How did we get to where we are right now with this idea?
Yeah, well, Reticulate Micro was spun out of another company, again with the focus on video compression. And January of last year, the board asked me to come on as the president and COO, and then a few months later CEO, to help drive the organization. And so coming into the business to help lead it, really I was asked to help refine the vision, refine the strategy. They wanted to, again, focus on getting some intellectual property and sorting all those things out. But the core focus, again, was this core competency and capability of sending HD video over super small connections. And since then, we've been able to develop a really robust product we call VAST, Video Assured Secure Transmission. And that enables that high quality video over the super small connections. And so from the beginning, that's what the company was based on. And for me, again, coming from a military background, I've had many friends that didn't come back from the battlefield because they didn't have a good awareness of what they were getting into. And so for me, it's very passionate. I'm very passionate about it. I'm very closely connected to it. And that's really what drives even the culture here at Reticulate Micro, is making sure that our friends come home. And from situations where otherwise they wouldn't be able to. And so that's really the core focus of the company, and growing from there,
Right.
focused, centered on that mission.
When you have something like this that's as technical as you're working on, you've got military, what is a starting point? It feels like this is a daunting undertaking that you're getting into, and it feels like it's probably lots of money, lots of team, lots of technology, just lots of things happening, right? So, what is
Yes.
like a starting point to at least, I don't know, put the toe in the water for this type of idea?
Right. Yeah. So again, from my background, I've supported military communications for years, and so having an awareness of the market, an awareness of the need, is really the starting point for us in terms of understanding where we need to go, and then coupling that with some of the existing solutions that we started with as a company, and then growing the team that really centers on how do we grow the technology and then meet the market demand at the same time, right? And so finding that intersection was super important. That's really where the starting point was for us. And then obviously from a pure business perspective, you also have to have those customers that have a need and they have the funds, right? And so finding those intersections has been super important for us. And so a broad market awareness, not just defense, but also in the commercial sector, because this is a dual use technology. We're seeing massive response from the commercial side as well. But yeah, those probably, if I were to say those top three things, like what's the technology, what's the mission, what's the market demand, and then where's the funding coming from for those requirements?
Yeah, walk me through a little bit more on maybe the customer in your guys' mind outside of military. You just mentioned it, outside of that commercial. What does that look like? Who would be using this type of technology in your guys' mind?
Yeah, so some of this is, I would say, civil, not quite defense, and so it could be border security, where you have just long, miles of border that need to be monitored. Also, critical infrastructure. So consider PG&E in California might be a good example of a customer that we would be pursuing, where they have miles, just miles of electrical infrastructure going through the wilderness, and I think we're all aware of the potential for wildfires in California. So the worst thing that could happen would be for one of those power lines to disconnect or a transformer to explode in the middle of nowhere. And the first thing, your first notification is, hey, there's a fire, right? So those type of scenarios as well. So critical infrastructure, border security, the cruise ship industry, every cruise ship has around 2,000 cameras on it. And so I think it's kind of an interesting market, because I think there's about 92 cruise ships in the world really that are operating, but each one of those cruise ships, they have a massive amount of video that they generate every single day. So how do you curate that? And they have their own reasons for insurance purposes or criminal investigations, post-fact, post-event. And another big one that we're really starting to see some interest is the healthcare industry, with think CT scans, MRIs, the DICOM imagery. Those files are just massive and they have to be kept for years. And so many of these medical companies, they have to keep these files in storage, cold storage, for years. So whether it's HIPAA, 7 years, growing to 10 years, if you're a childhood cancer patient, they got to keep it for 17 years. And so the potential there is just massive, because we don't just do video, we also do image compression of ratios of 5,000 to 1. So we're seeing some interest, and that's still, we're kind of keeping that on the down low because we're working through some unique opportunities there. But there's broad commercial applicability of the technology that we're finding.
Yeah, that's interesting. So now this just popped in my head here. Is this like Pied Piper from Silicon Prairie?
We get that quite a bit.
Silicon
Yeah,
Valley?
that's hilarious. Yeah. It's actually software that we do put in a box in the back of a data center.
Right.
And that's no, but you're totally spot on. It's actually very much similar to Pied Piper in some ways, but in the real world, right? And so yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious. So I guess how in this world though, I mean, how are you navigating technology moving like this, right? I mean, every day I can there's a new iPhone coming out, right, with millions of new specs. So I got to imagine that you guys live in spec world a little bit.
Yes.
So like how do you keep up with that? And then I also, from what my limited knowledge is that military can tend to move a little slow around adopting said maybe new technology. So it feels like that's a real tug and pull potentially in your world of, we're on 20 kilo, not 4G anymore. We're on 5G. We're on this, we're on that. Like, could you just fight that all the time? Like that type of
Yeah. Yeah, no, so you're absolutely right. So as we're developing solutions, there's a great amount of foresight that we have to take into account, right? And so oftentimes, I would say in years past, many companies, a business strategy would be to develop a proprietary type of technology, get it adopted, get it into a program record for the military, and then they're hooked on it and they can't get away from it. And then that technology, like you said, it becomes legacy. But for some reason, the military still has to use it because everything, they got massive architecture surrounding it. Well, they're going away from that, right? So there's something called MOS, a modular open systems approach. And I think 2019, the tri-service chiefs, the Navy, the Army, and the Air Force signed a memo saying every major program moving forward needs to be modular open systems, and that's hardware and software. So we've really taken that guidance to heart. And if you were to look at our software platform, VAST, not only does it have our own intellectual property, the ability to use our IP, our patent, which we're pursuing more of those, but really it's developed to be open source based. And so as new technologies emerge in the market, for example, our core VAST product is a unique flavor of AV1, which is an open standard. If AV2 comes out, we can quickly pivot to adopt that as well. And so as new emerging standards come out, we want to be able to be flexible and pivot to those. And so, as you pointed out, commercial industry is more likely to adopt those quicker. But still, as the military turns around and then is able to adopt those open standards, our core platform is designed to quickly accommodate those emerging standards. So our customers aren't locked into something legacy, as we can pivot to the speed of their adoption, right? And to how quickly they can adopt. And I think that's part of the superpower behind our offering, and the fact that it's really software based. So we're designed to, from a business perspective, it's really good because software has really good margins. But at the same time, some of our customers, they do want a box. They're just like their acquisition approach. I've got to have the thing that has the thing inside of it. Okay, we can accommodate that too. Again, we're really good on business there too, in terms of profitability. But really, the fact that it's software based allows us to quickly pivot to customer needs, to be able to put it in their existing infrastructures or emerging infrastructures and hardware platforms. So so we're able to quickly pivot to accommodate new changes and new standards that come out in the market.
Oh, that's cool. Well, I guess through all of that, how do you handle then data security? I got to imagine that that's very high priority list on the to-do list for the day, maybe. So, I'm sure there's some balance there too between like we can quickly pivot and do all the stuff you just mentioned, but then how does data security? I got to imagine that's a major concern. How do you guys navigate those waters in this?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've adopted, again, the core is some of the basics, AES 256 type of encryption. And so we're able to accommodate that. So our core offering does include that. if you were to look at our vast encoder, the software version of it, we also have some VPN capabilities that are included in there. And then we initiated some emerging work with post-quantum security as well. The first step in that is to adopt what we call extended entropy or randomization. And so we have a partner, Quantropy is someone that we've partnered with there to develop that. And NSA actually just a few weeks ago formally announced their new standards for post-quantum encryption. So up until, again, a few weeks ago, it's kind of been a questionable area in terms of certification for that. So we're happy that those standards have come out. But in the meantime, we weren't waiting for the standard to come out to really start pursuing these types of solutions. And so for us, a first step is to include randomization, which helps you have better security with better keys, better crypto. It's harder to break with extended randomness. That's what the entropy means. And so entropy, you can think of equating that to randomness. And then the next steps would be to implement post-quantum security for symmetric and asymmetric keys. And so that would be like a replacement for AES 256 in the future.
Interesting. How do you guys handle in this scenario of moving big video files into scenarios like the cruise ships you just mentioned, or maybe in battlefields where maybe internet is not tip top, or the services is weak? Like, how are you ensuring though that this is working as succinctly as you're mentioning, when you get into scenarios that might not be as have the best internet connections or satellite connections? Like, how do you sort of navigate to make sure that no, our system's working, it was
right,
something else wasn't working?
Yeah, there's a few ways that we have anticipated that as a requirement. Really, we've designed it to accommodate those scenarios, because you're absolutely right. There might be times, again, let's stick with the battlefield, a military scenario. I'm sure it's kind of common knowledge that the military started to pick up Starlink, right? And so it's become a very
if we're in a Starlink or something like that, then
exactly.
we might be,
Yeah, so Starlink's really good, and it gives you lots of throughput, lots of bandwidth, we would say. And so you could, watch HD videos all day long and support morale and welfare. People can check their emails and this, that, and the other. But sometimes those communications can get jammed. And so they might fall back to more legacy military architectures, or very low bandwidth connections, because that counteract those abilities. Without having a classified conversation, there are ways to mitigate jamming, but the result is a smaller connection. And so a couple ways that we align with that is, one, our user interface is super simple to use, and it has a drop down that allows the customer to directly say, am I connected to a Starlink, or am I connected to something that's a smaller connection? And it's user friendly in that way, and it's very simple. And so it makes sure the system is able to send that video. And then we also have an initial flavor of what we call bandwidth AI, so artificial intelligence. And so there's actually a cognitive response it's aware of the signaling between the encoder and the player. And so you have both of those components, and based upon the feedback, it's able to detect changes in the connectivity and make sure, again, that the customer is getting the best image possible as quickly as possible. So those are the two ways that we mitigate that right now.
Interesting. Yeah, that's cool. How do you guys see like bio information tools and platforms, like, and in maybe in like the research that you might already be using? Like, how do you guys see kind of taking those types of things, applying it into the research you're kind of talking about, and other tools and platforms kind of utilizing what you're doing, and you see what I'm saying? Like, how do you kind of see that happening with maybe other tools out there in the world?
What other kind of tools are you thinking about?
I don't know. I'm like, maybe just like, information that might be coming out, certain areas, certain regions. Like, would people be able to access this somehow in your world of saying like, hey, we saw that this went like this, this battlefield, right? You know what I mean? Like, would other people have access to this, to what you guys are doing, in a way that might help other tools in this space?
Yeah, potentially. And so I think there's broad applicability, so long as for us it's centered on video compression and image compression, right? So we do get asked like, well, what about PDFs, or what about other kinds of data sets? And that's not really something that's in our direct wheelhouse. And so for us, it's focusing on those competencies and the core focus of where we're at. We do have partnerships and emerging partnerships with other organizations and other companies that I believe are really accretive. And so there are other companies that do, I would say, raw or pure data compression. And it is a super enabler whenever you're able to bring those, whenever we're able to bring those capabilities together. And so not only do you have the data, maybe of the environment that's around the video, but at the same time, we do have something. So we have something called KLV, key link values. And so the idea with KLV, or cursor on target, COT, you might hear that. And that's a data stream that's embedded in the video that actually, so when a camera's looking at something, it's information related to that. So it might be the altitude of the platform, or the position, the specific position of that video where it's being generated from. And that's super helpful for decision makers, because it allows them to get an understanding of the geographic area around that video as well.
Right, right. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I always try to imagine in any of these types of conversations, what are these other things that are just outliers to like the core business, right? That just might exist, might be, but also might not be something that you guys want to, oh, let's go throw ourselves over here, right? The shiny toy syndrome over here of like, oh, we're gonna go do that now, but I always try to imagine like all these other things that might be around there. How do you guys handle in this type of environment, sort of case studies, success stories? What are I'm again assuming a little bit here on like military, like what can you say, can't say, like, and I got to imagine there's, hey, let me see, okay, prove it, let me see your thing, right? Let me see your widget do its thing, right? So how do you navigate case studies and testimonials for what you guys do?
Yeah, so a lot of the concern, and so one of the factors for, let's just say a factor for classification of information and sensitivity, is perishability. Like, how long is that information valuable, right? And kind of the de facto position for the military in years past has been like forever, 25 years. We're not telling you anything, and you've got to go through 30 different wickets of lawyers to have a public announcement. And I'm being a little hyperbolic here. However, one thing that we do is, if we do have a public announcement, we keep it very high level and generic. So certainly we don't want to compromise our customer on the defense side. And we keep it like, you might see something that says, oh, the U.S. Army tested this. Well, we're not going to say who in the U.S. Army tested it, or the U.S. Navy tested that, or
Right.
whatever else. So we do try and keep it at a high level. And then certainly the core capabilities of what we're offering are commercial in nature. And so we can talk about that and talk about those case studies. But when it intersects the specific application for a specific mission set, those are some of the things that we have to just be careful about, and we redact that, and we dance around that, just because we don't want to compromise our customers, right? And so it's something we're really aware of. But yeah, at a high level, if we're doing a comparison against somebody else's technology that's publicly available, and typically we keep those, we don't talk about brands, because we don't want to say something bad about one of our competitors potentially. Which we try not to do that anyway, right? And so for all the reasons, right, we want to be positive. Broad comparisons, and then keeping things at a high level, depending upon the customers and who they are in defense.
Yeah. How do you guys absorb and listen to feedback from these customers? What do you guys have a process in place? If Johnny says he doesn't like it, it's not doing what you said it does. How are you taking that information, then also making sure that information is not maybe pushing your company into a direction you don't want to go, right? Like, how do you sort of just absorb feedback?
Right. It's a good balance. Yeah. So we do listen to our customers, especially as an early stage startup, right? Where we want to make sure that we're truly meeting their needs and truly meeting their requirements. And so oftentimes we'll intake their feedback and response. We have our internal process for integrating that feedback, putting it into our development process. Is it something we're already working on? Is it something we want to work on? And sometimes, unfortunately, it's stuff that goes in the parking lot. It's like, hey, this is kind of outside of our wheelhouse. And even with that, we'll give our customers feedback based upon our market knowledge to say, like, hey, this might be another solution that will meet your requirements. And so, because we think goodwill goes a long way, even if it might be a competing, or we might say a competitive technology, someone that we're kind of working with that might also be a competitor in certain parts of the market. So again, our focus there is the customer. And so, but we, at the same time, it is a healthy balance, because we do want to make sure that we're not pursuing the shiny balls. We're not pulling off into a vector where you end up just spending you dilute your focus, and then you're just not effective. And so we're very careful about that. We were actually a small little segue there. We were, I would say even 6 months ago, we're looking at space as a focus and how do we effectively integrate into space. And we're looking at applications of our technology in different ways and wrestling with the opportunities there. We made a decision to really pivot back to make sure that we're focused on video and VAST and the application of our technology and all those operational domains, and not deviating from that core competency of the company.
Yeah. Do you guys have to navigate like regulatory compliance at all, like at all for what you're working on, or does that fit into day-to-day stuff?
Yeah, to a degree. So one of the things that we do have, we're the exclusive distributor for Hymera radios. Those are radios that were developed in Ukraine. For us, it's very complementary because those radios, they're a commercial product. They're considered commercial, but they were developed in Ukraine to counter some of the jamming and the intercept capabilities of Russians, again, without going into the details. And so we see massive value for U.S. forces because they're a relatively low-cost radio that provides secure communications. And for us, the potential is there for us to send our video over these radio connections as well. But to your point of regulatory compliance, if you're going to if you get a radio that does emit signals and our radio frequencies, you got to go through the FCC, right? And so we're in the process of making sure that the radios are good to go in the United States, that we have that regulatory approval for that too. And then certainly if we end up making anything ourselves, so like if we decide to make our own encoder, we're going to make our own little, PCB board, and we're going to wrap it in metal and sell it as an appliance, which we're working through that right now. You got to go through FCC approval for that too, just to make sure that it's not, you don't turn it on and it starts jamming all the signals around it. It's people's cell phones drop off. I mean, this is no good, right? And so those are the kind of things that we have to follow for sure.
Yeah. What keeps you and the team up at night right now? Like what's the biggest thing right now that you guys have to focus on?
Ooh, just balancing market demand and then the focus of the company and driving towards revenue, right? And so for me, again, we're a startup, and so everybody's wearing multiple hats, and so there might be times where, I mean, in my role as CEO, I've got to help lead the organization and keep it healthy, but I might also put on the hat of a field service engineer, or I might have to do a demo because I have a very technical background, right? And so, and everybody on the team does that as well. Like my EVP of sales, he's just a consummate professional when it comes to program and project management. So he's rolled up his sleeves and done some of that work as well. So if you look across our team, everyone is multidisciplined. We're all cross-functional. And so I think for that, just making sure that we're meeting customers' requirements, that we're focused on delivering the capabilities, and then balancing running the business itself. And so those are the kind of things that keep us up at night.
Yeah. That's, a lot of our listeners are founders themselves. So how did you navigate putting this team together, the people on the call here that were introduced in the beginning? Like, how did you think about this in terms of team? Or is it something that has just been kind of growing and evolving as the weeks and the months might be going by?
Yeah, I think it's those kind of questions. I think oftentimes we feel like we're stuck into an either or, and I feel like this is a both and kind of a response, because I wasn't a founder of the company, and so I was brought in to help grow the company and grow the team. And when I first came in, we had like 3 people, and now we've got around 15, 16 people, and maybe more if you include our contractors that we work with too. And so my background. I built really good relationships in industry and the market in the past 20 years. And I was able to pull some of those relationships together. So part of it's, hey, we're getting the band back together. We're going to make things happen again. There's a little bit of that. Also, just bringing in people that I trust and that the team trusts. That's important as well. And then also being able to shape the company. And we don't always get it right. So we might bring someone on that maybe you find out quickly. I mean, you could look at all these Gary Vaynerchuk videos on the internet. It was like, get them out quickly, if they don't align with the organization. So I think just really being centered on culture and focusing on maintaining that culture. We bring a lot of special operations forces, soft values into our culture, and focusing on that and curating that, radical honesty, accountability, making sure that we're focused on mission, right? Those kind of themes are super important for what we do. And that's kind of been the focus. If that answers your question, right? So
I think it's important. I think it's a lot of startups just jump in. CEO just does a bunch of stuff, but at some point you got to put team around you. You've got to put people.
yes,
You literally cannot do it all, and
absolutely.
it's hard to start letting that stuff go and having some trust as you're letting that stuff go to other people. So when you stand back with your expertise and this knowledge, where are we in 5 years from now? Where is this whole thing? Is everything still moving faster? Is video even quicker? Is it holograms? Is it 3D? Where are we in 5 years from now in your mind?
That's a good question. I think that's a difficult question because the themes that we're running into right now with artificial intelligence and quantum computing, and quantum computing, to clarify for listeners, is the ability, computer technologies that can solve really big problems very quickly, right? And so encryption that could take thousands of years to break can now be done in potentially 30 seconds, a couple minutes, a couple hours. And so when we're talking about converging those technologies, there's a lot of unknowns that we're going to encounter. And so you can look on the internet today and find the air quotes deep fake videos that are, you go in and you type a few words and artificial intelligence makes a video and you can't even tell if the person's real or not, right? So that's a concern. That's going to be an area of regulation. That's going to be an area of unknown technology development. And you couple that with like NVIDIA technologies and on all these computer chips that are just going to get more and more advanced. So the problem we're going to face is, can you believe what you see? Can you believe what you hear? And I think that's where we're going to see a really core focus on technology development to testify to the veracity, the truthfulness of what we're taking for information. And there'll be a battle that has nothing to do with technology. Then we start having a political and psychological and sociological big idea questions and stuff. But from a pure technology perspective, that's going to be a focus, I believe, in the next 5 to 10 years. Can you trust what you see? Can you trust what you hear? And developing technologies that validate that.
Yeah, I think just to add a flavor from the financial twist standpoint, right? From finance perspective, our industry, our product is really a country agnostic, segment agnostic, sector agnostic, right? Opportunity is so huge, right? If you really revert back, the contribution of technology to the GDP, right? Before the technology really came into existence, right? Annual, every century, the GDP was doubling, right? And then there comes the steam engine and it get 4x. Guess what? In the last 50 years, if you look at the GDP, right? And in the whole year, whole 100 years, you look at 100x. We have just started the century and look at what's happening. Right. So I think 5 years is a long time. It's difficult to predict, but the proliferation of the product being segment agnostic, country agnostic, and you go and displace other sectors and take market share, humongous, right? I'm just wearing a finance hat to really show the roadmap to where the opportunities really exist, right? So this is huge opportunity for us.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, just kind of pivoting right back for just a quick second, like on that truth, right? Like, but it seems like you guys are building something that potentially answers the truth. This video officially happened through this time, right? We were the ones that moved it, and I'll just use a pipe analogy. We know it crossed this path. We know it started here. We know it's here, right? There is some record to some degree that says, I'll go back to the battlefield thing. This is true, right? So that might be a data point of like, there's truth here, not just that a video that was created somewhere, that we don't know if it was real or where it came out. You guys would actually potentially have a record of that to some degree, right?
Yes. Yeah. And so there are different technologies that we're, without getting, again, into the special sauce or maybe some of the competitive stuff that we might be working on. So the ability, you might see language secure from source to site. So the idea is that as long as you're looking at technology that was sourced from one of our video encoders, and you're viewing it with one of our video players, that connection, we aim to have everything secure from the generation of that video to you looking at the video or even having it in storage. And that's why it's important to have to integrate post-quantum security to make sure that it's resilient, has resilient security for the foreseeable future. But then also having the ability to uniquely encode it. How can we digitally fingerprint? How can we watermark? How can we adopt new methodologies to make sure that the video that you're looking at or the audio that you're listening to has not been altered or modified?
Yep.
And in the very least, you can tell if it has been. Yeah, let's just say it's modified. You can tell that it has been. You at some point, you may not know what the original video was, but you can certainly tell, something happened to this video in between, and again, a worst case scenario from when it was generated to when I was viewing it. And so we look at those two methodologies as super important, and how we're getting there, we don't want to talk about here.
Yeah.
Of course. But those are things that we're interested in, and that certainly our customers are interested in, and we certainly see value for that in the future.
It's fascinating in my world. It's intriguing just to learn about the stuff and just to know that like how big these conversations are. And the other thing too is, and this is me, I got to imagine how hard has it been to kind of adopt just the mindset of how much video is being processed every day, right? Like I always talk about this with like people like when they're like, I don't know, I put something on LinkedIn and I only got like 4 posts. Like, do you know how much content is going on LinkedIn every day? Like, do you have any idea, right? Like how, but in your world, I can't even fathom the numbers. We're making video right now, right? We're making some high definition video. We're doing it right now. But like, and that's just this in the day. Like, how do you guys even put your brain powers to like how much content is going on right now as we do this?
Yeah, and that's a great question. It's an insane question. I mean, in in a good way. Like we're talking like, can I measure the size of the universe? I mean, we're talking petabytes, zettabytes of video, and it's growing exponentially. Everybody has a cell phone, now. I mean, smartphones are proliferated. Some people have 2 or 3 or 4 of them, right? And so, and they're generating video on their laptop, just like we're doing today with a Zoom call, and it's being recorded. And so it's not just real time; it's also kept in storage. And then there's flavors of that video that are being modified. You got online platforms like Opus AI is a great one where people will upload a long form video and then it does its auto magic where it goes in and creates, right? Exactly. Right. And it's crazy. Right. And so that information has to be curated. It has to be kept, and maybe it's not, maybe it's just deleted by some folks, but that's one of our concerns as well. And for us, we see it as a great market opportunity because current infrastructure, the data centers that we have, cannot keep up with the generation of video, especially as it's exponentially increasing. Everybody wants to be a YouTuber or an influencer. It's not just the remote work. And so like I was actually I'm halfway through my doctorate in business administration. And one of the core focuses that we had was ICTs, the adoption of internet communication technologies in the COVID era, right? And so all these organizations quickly had to pivot to remote working, right? And how are they achieving it? They're with Teams and with Zoom, and Blue Jeans and all these different platforms. But we saw a really fast pivot to these video platforms, these video technologies, and the infrastructure really couldn't keep up, right? And so, and I think we've pivoted and it's picked up a little bit, but the exponential growth of video is just going to continue to crush our infrastructure. And so for us, we see a massive market potential there because we're able to, we're talking about reducing file sizes by 80 or 90%. It's completely game changing for storage for sure, but also for streaming. So for us, it's a unique problem, but one that we love because it presents massive market opportunity for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to add that the economic and financial sense, right? Context first, I was in Beijing, China, when the whole ByteDance TikTok started, right? Hey, we didn't know. Again, probably it was news back then. There was some lot of partnership trying to capture the Chinese market, right? And and it was 2017. That's when ByteDance. It was not TikTok back then, and TikTok was kind of the spin-off, and it just proliferated the whole entire universe, right? When it started, it reaches 1 billion people, right? My point being is the time and the span it takes to reach people is universal, global. It's never been done before, right? Second, it comes down to economics again. The if you really look at again the video compression technology, it's simply for me it's economics, and it's not about a matter of if, it's a when, right? Again, you know, energy is the most expensive and most vital commodity that we have, and you know we're getting there, right? It's so the video compression technology and the opportunity that I see from the economic and finance sense, it has to come, and we are I would say in a lot of ways in the forefront and leading the pack.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I know you guys are raising right now. That's why we got on this call today. So I know you guys have a Reg A set up. Why don't you talk a little bit about how you know, as a company decided to go this route, where you see the opportunities, kind of what was the behind the mindset behind it to start a raise like this?
Yeah, so the founders of the company really built this with going public in mind, right? And so for them, they saw maximum value to shareholders by going public, and really the markets I'd say the past 18 months have been difficult, right? And so the micro caps are just getting crushed with IPOs. And it started, I would say the convergence with a little bit of market instability. And then October 7th of last year, you know, when they had the incursion in Israel, that really it set the tone in an unhealthy way. And so we made a strategic decision to pause, revisit in the spring, and really we're not seeing the markets recover the way that we would like them to bring maximum value to shareholders. And so we had a decision: do we adopt VC, venture capital, or private equity? And I think for us, Reg A makes a little bit more sense because it allows us to democratize access to the company. And so we can lower the threshold, more people can invest, but it also allows us to maintain more control. Because oftentimes, I'd say venture capital, typically when they come in, they want an inordinate amount of control compared to the amount of investment they give. And we don't believe that presents, especially with this specific technology and our specific focus, the ability to bring maximum shareholder value. So that's really the driver for the Reg A. And we do, you know, I can't predict the future. I can't promise the future, right? And keeping with, you know, making sure that we're following all the rules here. But certainly it's our intent, our desire to, as we enter into revenue, we have a desire to go public. So that's not something that we're shy about. We've submitted an S1, and now we have a 1A, right? And so that's things you do when you're going public or you're doing a Reg A. And so all of our public filings are there, and potential investors are more than welcome to go and look up those documents and see where we're at. And it's got a good bit of information about the history of the company too. But that was really the driver for us pursuing a Reg A. How do we democratize access to what we're doing and bring maximum shareholder value over time?
Yeah, that's awesome. Where do you see sort of fundraising in general to this idea? Is this something where, you know, you're constantly fundraising, this is a short amount of time so that you can go back to focus on, or is it a raise capital, work on product, come back to fundraising? Like, just, you know, for, again, other companies who are just thinking about fundraising, how do you kind of navigate this? Or is it, hey, get us to big contracts with customers, and then we don't really need to do this? Or, you know, just kind of the holistic view, maybe a little bit more on this.
Yeah, so I think for us, again, it's one of those both and solutions, right? So for us, the focus is achieving growth for the company, right? And our focus is on the bottom line. Our focus is on revenue. right? And so how the best way for us to achieve it at any given moment, that's our focus. And so sometimes it means, I mean, we have to pivot. The benefit of being a small firm and a startup is that we're able to quickly pivot based upon those needs to grow the company. But our focus, again, just like anybody else, I mean, I would say any other CEO, how do I build a company that's generating revenue, that's healthy? And so sometimes that means you do have to take investment. What happens if we do win a massive contract and we get a purchase order for 10,000 encoders? Man, I would love for that purchase order to come in, but then you're stuck with that question. Well, man, sometimes it takes money to make money. And so we have that decision matrix that's continually evolving, right? And so our calculus continues to change, but these are variables that we continue to keep in the equation, right? And so my intent, my desire would be we get the capital we need through the raise, and we're able to execute. We're able to continue to grow the company that we need to in a way that's focused on revenue. I mean, it's the cheapest source of capital, right? Is revenue. So that's really our ultimate goal.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, where can people dive in? They want to learn more. Where should they go? How do they just maybe even just learn more about what you guys are doing? Maybe even you guys in particular, but where should they go if they're interested in this conversation?
I would say just go to the website, www.reticulate.io, and start there. And there's all sorts of information about our product offerings. There's information, links to the opportunity to participate in the Reg A. That's on there as well. And then we're on Facebook and we're on LinkedIn too as well. And then quite often, my own profile, I'll talk quite often about the core technology and our focus and our mission as a company. And I put information out there too.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, before we go, I always end every podcast with the same 5 questions. I'll open it up for anybody that wants to jump in, but we're going to be a little lighter. We're not going to get in the weeds on fundraising or any of the technology here. But so what are you watching on TV right now? Are you watching any shows, anything you're watching right now?
Oh, yeah, no, it's interesting. I haven't been watching a lot of TV here recently. Just because my work is my hobby.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, I end up at night, I'm still working on things, and it's more on the technical side though, right? I would say during the day it's business, and at night it's more technical. Like how am I learning more about video encoding and those kinds of things? Because you're never done learning, right? But I'd say like YouTube, maybe one of my YouTube things I like watching is Bright Insight,
Okay.
right? So that's a nice YouTube channel. They're talking about Atlantis, and they're talking about the pyramids and all sorts of the Younger Dryas event. And so for those that don't know about that, it's pretty interesting stuff. And so that kind of stuff piques my interest as well.
Okay. Okay. How about podcasts? You listen to any podcast episodes right now?
Kind of the staples. Joe Rogan,
Okay.
he's one of my go-to podcasts. The Sean Ryan
Yeah.
podcast, because given I worked for Naval Special Warfare Development Group. For 9 years as a supporting person. I ran communications R&D for that organization, for the communications department, my last 4 years there. And so it's like Navy SEALs and special operations and that kind of stuff. It's kind of my way to on the commercial side to stay plugged in a little bit. But those are kind of probably my 2 go-to podcasts.
Okay. How about books? You read anything right now?
So the first 90 days. And so I think it's always good. You're never, a lot of folks I've read a book and I'm going to be done with that. I think it's good to revisit those things. Good strategy, bad strategy is another good one. And then anything like Daniel Goleman, I like those. Patrick Lencioni, anything that's focused on emotional intelligence, I think is super helpful for growing an organization and really getting to know people and understand people and how to motivate people. Those are all healthy things. And I'm always going back to those books.
Nice. How about music? You listen to anything right now?
I like Dave Matthews. I mean, I'll throw something there, or Mitch Murder. He's kind of a electro pop synth 1980s kind of a flavor. It's really good when we want to plug in without any words.
Yeah.
But that's I highly recommend Mitch Murder for your listeners there.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, gentlemen, I appreciate all of you taking time out of your day. This was a great conversation. I always love walking away from these things and taking this type of information to, maybe dinner tonight with the wife. I learned a whole bunch about this, and have her look at me like, what did you do today? Well, don't worry about it. Yeah, but no, this is a great conversation. For everybody out there, if you guys are interested, obviously go to the show notes. We've got links to the websites. And if you guys want to dive into transcriptions or any portions of this conversation, I encourage you guys to do it. But again, great conversation. I wish you guys a lot of luck on the fundraising, and I'll be watching from my end. But again, really, really cool stuff. Great technology. And I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Jeff.